Shalom and a warm welcome to the Middle East Report. In this program today we'll be discussing Israel beyond the conflict and how we can promote stronger commercial ties between Britain and the Jewish state of Israel. Warm welcome to the programme, and today's special guest is all the way from Manchester. His name is Nigel Tobias. He's the Executive Director of the Zionist Central Council in Manchester. We have a lot in common. You're a big football fan, love dogs, and passionate supporter of Israel. So, Nigel, warm welcome to the Middle East Report.
Simon, thank you very much for having me on. Yes, absolutely. Come all the way from Manchester. It's a great honour and I'm delighted to be here.
That's a pleasure. And Nigel, do you want to share with us something of your Jewish background growing up in Manchester, and what's the Jewish community like there growing up in what I can say is a very active and a very dynamic Jewish community?
I grew up originally in North Manchester, one of 4 children, and basically I think the first time that I went to Israel I was 8. I was immersed in a Jewish culture. Initially, my mum wasn't Jewish. My mum and dad got together 70 years ago, and my mum converted to Judaism. And so we had strong moral and ethical background from both sides, as it were. Went to a Jewish school, went to kibbutz. I had a wide mix of friends, and I've lived in Manchester all my life.
Amazing. And what is Manchester like for the Jewish community as well? Because often so many of my Jewish guests are from North London, so it's great to have a kind of representative from the Manchester area. I know that a lot of our viewers from the Northwest, and I know it's a strong Jewish community up there. It's
a great Jewish community, very, very vibrant, very, very friendly. I think Manchester's friendly as a whole. You always feel at home there, but the Jewish community is strong both on the religious side and also the more secular side. Never really had any major problems at all, and the Jewish community and the non-Jewish community get on very, very well.
And just share with us your background in commerce and in business, and how you've been able to establish your career, but also use it as a kind of blessing to develop stronger commercial ties between Britain and Israel.
Well, when I left school, I went to work in the family food business. There was little choice in the matter. We had a traditional cash and carry. We used to supply independent grocers. And we used to, even back then in the late 70s, we were sort of importing from certain countries, and we started to import from Israel. And we brought fruit and veg over from Israel in cans. We dealt with Yachin, one of the canning factories. And, you know, from there we started to supply supermarket chains, and the business grew. So I became immersed in commerce, but also going backwards and forwards to Israel, doing business there as well.
Amazing. And what was that like to do business in Israel? The Israelis are pretty shrewd businessmen, aren't they?
They are pretty shrewd business people, but I have to say we were very much welcomed. If you go back to sort of when I was going over there properly to do business, it was, I would say, the late 70s, maybe 79, early 80s. And I think, you know, the Israelis were delighted to be able to do business with people in the UK. Obviously, there was lots of political problems at that time, coming after the 73 war and before the Lebanon war. So we had no problems. I do remember many years ago, the sales director of the Yachin canning factory, very, very friendly, took me to some great restaurants, and we became firm friends outside of the business world.
Amazing. And just share with us your role as the Executive Director of the Zionist Central Council in Manchester. Tell us about the remit of your organisation, the history of it, and how important it is to have advocates for Israel in the Manchester area.
Well, the ZCC heritage goes back to the early part of the 20th century when Chaim Weismann was at Manchester University. It was our luck that he came to Manchester because he was turned down for a position in London. He didn't like it at first, but you know, Mancunians very, very friendly. He was a passionate Zionist, had a very small group of very well-known friends such as Simon Marx and Israel Zeef from the Marxist Spencer's family. And in the late 1920s, 1929, the ZCC was formed as an umbrella organisation for all the other Zionist groups. And really it was to advocate for Israel and to advocate for the re-establishment of the Jewish state. Not the establishment, it's the re-establishment. And all the other groups were put into the ZCC as an umbrella group, and we became very central to the Manchester Jewish community. In 1964, there was an Israeli Trade Congress for Yom Ha'atzmaut, which is Israel Independence Day, and that was opened by Margaret Thatcher. So a very, very vibrant community to this day. It's slightly different nowadays, Simon, because Israel exists. So it's more a case of advocating for Israel and promoting what Israel can do for the world.
Absolutely. So if we take ourselves back to Chaim Weismann, not only was he the first president of the modern state of Israel, but he was also one of Israel's founding fathers. Just share with us what he actually means to the Jewish community in Manchester, because I followed in his footsteps by also attending the University of Manchester. I was never a professor there, but I was certainly a student there studying modern Middle Eastern history and modern Hebrew for 3 years in the mid-90s.
Well, Chaim Weismann is huge for Manchester, and vice versa, I would say. That if many people consider that the Balfour Declaration came out of Whitehall in London, but it actually came out from a small circle of friends in Manchester, and of that there is no doubt. Chaim Weismann became friendly, as I say, with Simon Marx, Israel Zeef. He was very, very friendly with Henry Sackler, who was a journalist at the Manchester Guardian at the time, and he became friendly with C.P. Scott, who was the editor. And it was these people that were passionate about the re-establishment of Israel as a modern state, Zionism as it was. And that's how it grew. Chaim Weismann was introduced to Lord George by the editor of the Manchester Guardian. He was also introduced to Alfred Balfour by Sam, I think it was Sam Mendelssohn back in sort of 1915, 1916. And it was out of that desire and out of the ambitions of that group of people, Mancunians, that the Balfour Declaration came about in 1917. So Chaim Weismann and Manchester Jewry are very, very connected, and we're proud of each other.
That's wonderful. So we've got the Manchester Jewish community to thank for the Balfour Declaration. So
I think we do.
So let's take a look at this excellent CBN news report that looks at the famous meeting between Chaim Weismann, the first president of Israel when he was a professor of chemistry at the University of Manchester, and also Lord Balfour, which then formulated the famous Balfour Declaration that became the birth certificate for the modern state of Israel.
At the height of World War I, Great Britain faced a critical shortage of acetone, the chemical needed to create the explosive in artillery cartridges. American shipments were cut off by German U-boats. And without acetone, British troops couldn't fire their guns, a big problem in the middle of a war. A young man named Winston Churchill was in charge of the British Navy, and he had heard about a chemist in Manchester who could help. The chemist later wrote about their first meeting.
Mr. Churchill, then a much younger man, was brisk, fascinating, charming, and energetic. Among his first words were, "Well, doctor, we need 30,000 tons of acetone. Can you make it?" I was so terrified by this lordly request that I almost turned tail.
Instead, the chemist went to work. He had already invented a way to create acetone by fermenting grains, potatoes, and even chestnuts. So he worked day and night to reproduce it in mass quantities. And soon, the British were producing 90,000 gallons a year in breweries and distilleries commandeered by the government. The chemist who saved the British Army was a Jewish man named Chaim Weismann, a Zionist leader who would one day become the first president of the State of Israel. Weizmann was born in 1874 in the Russian village of Motul. He was one of 15 children from an Orthodox Jewish family, and one of 9 who made it all the way through university.
In Russia, the Jews couldn't go to universities. So high education for Jews, it was something that impossible. So if you want to remain Jew, but in a better condition, you have one direction, west. Like Chaim Weismann, he went to Germany to learn science.
In addition to studying chemistry, Weizmann developed a deep interest in Zionism. Every year, he came to Basel to attend the Zionist Congress. He was here in 1903 when his hero, Theodor Herzl, dropped a bombshell on the crowd.
I remember one deeply significant detail of the stage setting. It had always been the custom to hang on the wall a map of Palestine. This had been replaced by a rough map of the Uganda Protectorate, and the symbolic action filled us with foreboding.
Then Theodor Herzl took the stage and presented the British government's offer to resettle the Jewish people in Uganda instead of Palestine. Weizmann was appalled and joined the Russian delegation in a walkout. The so-called Uganda plan was a disaster, but in it, Weizmann saw a small ray of hope.
On the other side, he said, well, something very interesting happened here. Who is behind this proposal? For the first time, a power, one of the most important powers of the time, or the most important one, Britain, thinks we are serious, speaking with us as a national collective. This is something that never happened before.
After that, Weizmann believed the British might be the Jews' best chance for a state. So in 1904, he took a position at the University of Manchester, his home for the next 30 years.
For someone like Chaim Weismann, to go to England during the Uganda crisis, is something very, can I say, stupid? If you want to be a leading Zionist, leader, so please stay in Paris, or in Vienna, or Berlin, or Geneva, but to go to Manchester, who heard about Manchester? It's like you exile yourself. Especially someone like Weizmann who wants to be a Zionist leader. And this is what he wanted to be. He didn't want to be a big scientist. He wanted to be Herzl's successor. That's what he wanted to do.
As it turned out, Manchester was the place where Weizmann would make one of his most important friendships, the former British Prime Minister, Lord Arthur Balfour. In 1906, Lord Balfour was campaigning in Manchester, and a friend introduced him to Chaim Weizmann. The two talked for more than an hour, and almost immediately, the conversation turned to Uganda.
But the Russian Jews need a safe haven immediately. Why not British East Africa?
The survival of Zionism is based on a spiritual conviction. And that conviction is based on Palestine, and on Palestine alone. If Moses had been here when they had proposed Uganda, he would surely have broken the tablets once again. Mr. Balfour, supposing I were to offer you Paris instead of London, would you take it?
But Dr. Weizmann, we have London.
That is true. And we had Jerusalem when London was nothing more than a marsh.
Are there many Jews who think like you?
I believe I speak the mind of millions of Jews who cannot speak for themselves.
If that is so, Dr. Weizmann, then you will one day be a force.
Lord Balfour had gone into the meeting hoping to change Weizmann's mind, but instead, he became the convert, and the Jewish people gained an ally in one of the most powerful men in England.
And if you watched the Middle East Report a few years ago in the build-up to the Balfour Declaration, then no doubt you would have seen that excellent video produced by CBN looking at the history of the Balfour Declaration, in particular that historic meeting between Chaim Weismann and also Lord Balfour that then produced the Balfour Declaration. This is so nice, isn't it, that we can reflect on the incredible heritage left behind by Chaim Weismann and the role that the Manchester Jewish community played in helping to birth the modern state of Israel. I think it's something that needs to be known a lot further afield, particularly in Israel, of Manchester's role in helping to bring about the re-establishment of the modern state of Israel. What do you think, Nigel?
I totally agree, Simon. In Israel, Netanya is known as the Little Manchester. So the Manchester community is very, very supportive of Israel. In everything that it does, and is not afraid to put its head above the parapet and defend Israel verbally and wherever we can, and wherever we come across the sort of toxic reactions to Israel, we're not afraid to defend Israel.
Excellent. What do you say are the current challenges facing the Jewish community up in Manchester? Because we're seeing that the Jewish community outside of North London is becoming much smaller. Is that the same sort of impact you're having as well in Manchester? And
I would say that the community is probably still as large, and as I say, it's a very vibrant community. What I would say is that I think the younger generation, having grown up with Israel being in existence, doesn't see the problem and you know where Israel has come from and the sort of battles that we've gone through as a community to get to where we are now. So I don't think they're as interested as much as we are. I think that's probably one of the biggest challenges.
And what is the big remit for the Zionist Central Council in terms of creating awareness of Israel advocacy, looking at Israel, as we are on this programme, beyond the conflict to show the incredible innovation and startup nation that Israel actually is?
One of the things that the ZCC does, and it does it very, very well, we find Israeli guests that we bring over for sort of 3 or 4 days, and we'll do a tour of presentation tour usually between London and Manchester, of somebody that absolutely represents the very best that Israel has to offer. So in previous presentations we've brought over Sivanya Ari from Innovation Africa, 2 days in London, 2 days in Manchester, and she spoke very, very well and portrayed what Israel can do in providing water on the African continent. Very recently, we had Gal Lusky from Israeli Flying Aid, and again, she did 2 days in London, 2 days in Manchester, and she presented very, very well in regard to all the work that she does to protect and look after civilians in countries that actually don't have good relationships with Israel. So she works in Syria. She gave out COVID vaccinations in the Gaza Strip. She's worked in the Sudan, Somalia, and people just don't understand. It's almost as if they're more interested in the messenger than the message. And what we're saying is that actually it's the message that's important, not who's giving it. So that's how we advocate for Israel. We bring these people over. And the question is, if not these people doing this amazing humanitarian work, who?
Absolutely. And also, how is your community being affected by what is seen as the kind of unprecedented rise of Jew hatred, sadly, in this country? How has this affected the Jewish community up in Manchester? Well,
I don't think it's as great in Manchester, but there is a growth of anti-Semitism, that's for sure. Obviously, all synagogues need protection, which shouldn't be happening in this day and age, but I'm part of my local synagogue security sort of detachment, and I'm on every 4 or 6 weeks. And to be fair, there occasionally, you can get verbal abuse, but I would say it's not greater than that at the moment. I still think there is, a large amount of people that regard Israel as being a state that shouldn't exist, and I think that's something that we shouldn't allow to happen.
Absolutely. Nigel, share with us your new role that you've been appointed to regarding Israel and British Chamber of Commerce and what that involves.
Well, I was asked to take over the British Israel Chamber of Commerce, which had been run for the last 28 years by Gideon Klaus. And it sort of does what it says on the can. We further relations between Israel and Britain, and wherever we can, we have guest speakers, maybe 3 or 4 a year. And it's not that there is a membership, so you have to be a member of the BICC to be invited to one of the events, but you can be a member as an individual or as a business, and it's cross-community, so it's not just the Jewish community. In fact, it's very important that it's not just the Jewish community. So we have members, we have banks that are members, we have firms of solicitors, accountants, actually individual businesses. We have members in Israel, and as I say, every 3 or 4 months we will bring a speaker over. In fact, our next speaker in June is Ofer Farah, who is the trade minister attached to the Israeli embassy for the UK, and he's going to be our next guest speaker. And I think what we do is we actually get British companies together with Israeli companies, and I think that's a great thing. It's a great way to advocate for what Israel.
Absolutely. And you are very passionate about business and commerce. And share with us how being passionate about business is a way to look beyond the conflict and actually then to develop stronger ties between Israel and this country. And of course, we know, our viewers know very well the scriptures in Genesis 12 that I will bless those who bless you and I will curse those who curse you. So it makes absolute perfect business sense to do business with Israel.
Israel has a lot to offer, and Britain has a lot to offer. So the bilateral trade between Israel and the UK is growing. It's currently about 7 billion, and it's growing. So for the UK, it's very, very important. And if you consider that one in 6 prescription drugs in the UK through the NHS is supplied by an Israeli company, then it demonstrates that the UK and Israel can grow business together and are looking to do so. And I think when you get down to it, businesses want the very best that they can offer to their clientele. And if that comes from Israel, again, it should be about the message and not the messenger. Why shouldn't Israel do business with the UK? Why shouldn't the UK do business with Israel?
Absolutely. And of course, I mean, if we look at, it was only just recently we celebrated Israel's 75th anniversary as a nation reborn in fulfillment of biblical prophecy. And what's extraordinary then is that in the early days of Israel surviving that awful war of independence when she was attacked by 5 Arab armies on the very next day after David Ben-Gurion declared that famous Declaration of Independence on the 14th of May, we see that after that war, that all Israel was able to export was oranges. And so we've gone from oranges to Israel now being a startup nation, a nation of innovation, and Israel is at the forefront of new technology as well. So Israel has gone from supplying oranges around the world to now being one of the greatest innovators in the world. Share with us the miracle that is the Israeli economy.
I think the Israeli economy, as you say, post-1948, Israelis had no choice but to make a success of the re-establishment of the State of Israel. And basically, there was a lot of land that needed to be cultivated, and so Israel became very, very strong in agriculture and farming and dairy. But in the background as well, there were a large number of people, very educated people, that post the Holocaust had come into Israel and had scientific brains and were very intellectual. And so I think, Israel grew out of necessity. And in this day and age, I think Israel has shown in terms of its startup in fintech, in agricultural tech, in cybersecurity, in health, in education, that it wants to be a leading model for what the world can achieve. And I also think that in terms of the intellectual capacity and the startup nation, it came out of the Israeli army. and the fact that small groups were formed and everybody had to go into the Israeli army. So basically a taxi driver could tell a multimillionaire in Israel what to do and how to do it. And Israel is a country with so many different nationalities that predominantly are Jewish, and we're not afraid to express an opinion. And we're very clear about doing it. So if you think something's wrong, it's wrong, and it doesn't matter. And I think, you know, from these small groups and from these discussions, people aren't afraid to voice their opinion, and from that comes progress.
Excellent. So let's have a look at this excellent CBN News report that's called Israel as a Light unto the Nations. Israeli startups flock to Jerusalem to heal the world.
Our Crowd is an annual event that showcases Israel's innovations from medicine to agriculture and technology. The startups here at the Our Crowd Summit address a number of challenges facing the world, including the most pressing one of the day, the coronavirus. Sanitize uses nitric oxide to kill topical infections, including the coronavirus.
All the stores ran out of all the hand sanitizer, so we have the gel. And it's a gel that releases nitric oxide, so if you put it on your hands, and I can show you, you take it like that and you put it on your hands and you rub it. All the bacteria, viruses, everything that I had is gone. That's it. So it works.
Our Crowd is the dream of founder Jonathan Medved.
Our Crowd is the world's largest democratic venture investing platform. We allow people from all over the world to invest in great startups that are being built here in Israel and around the world. They're changing the world in areas such as cybersecurity, mobility, healthcare, ag tech. They're creating the next big thing.
Israel is now at the forefront and in the center of problem-solving technologies for the entire world. We know how to export solutions, and this really is the pinnacle of where we display that.
At the summit, global investors meet Israeli innovators. Former NBA star and investor Michael Redd says he comes because of his Christian faith.
First and foremost, I would say that the presence of God is here. Obviously, this is his land, this is his people, and there's an energy and there's a presence here that I've never felt before. So if you've never been here before, come for that reason and reason alone initially, but also the brilliance, the genius of Israel and Jerusalem in particular is just off the charts.
This year, thousands of investors registered from more than 180 countries, and some came on what they call a tech pilgrimage. Investors even came from some of the Arab nations in the Middle East. They found companies like Egibees that is helping fight the catastrophic fires in Australia, and Alpha Tau that's developed a new technology called DART radiation that's curing cancer. Our Crowd reports that 36 of its companies have been bought out by brand names like Intel, Uber, and Canon.
People ask themselves often, look, you're a little country, 9 million people. How come you're curing cancer, and how come you're solving for Parkinson's tremor, and how come you're helping the Australians fight those horrible fires, and how come you're solving problems of cybersecurity or shooting missiles out of the sky? What do you guys put in the water here? And the answer is that we have a long tradition in the Jewish people of turning curses into blessings.
Many see the phenomenon as an expression of Tikkun Olam.
Tikkun Olam is a very central Jewish value that we're not here just to help ourselves, but we're here to help fix, heal the world. It's a very central Jewish value, and for us, we see our technology as an expression of that value.
Medved sees this marriage of groundbreaking innovation and investment through the lens of the Bible.
I look at it more biblically. I think that this is our destiny here in Israel. Your viewers know that we were destined to be an Or LaGoyim, a light to the nations. And this is the manifestation of that prophecy, of that destiny. Israel today is providing solutions to problems that affect the world. And whether it's the coronavirus or cancer or hunger, our companies are on it.
The bottom line for Our Crowd is to change the world. They call it the double bottom line, making money while doing good. By 2020, they had $1.4 billion committed to funding startups, while fighting fires in Australia, curing cancer, and combating the coronavirus. Chris Mitchell, CBN News, the Our Crowd Summit, Jerusalem.
And that was filmed last year in 2022, but shows you the incredible technology and innovation that Israel is developing, and really says that if you do want to boycott Israel, then you're going to suffer badly, because the whole world benefits from Israel's innovation. Nigel, I just got some figures here, actually taken from the Trade and Industry website. I was looking to see how much trade our nation does with Israel because of Brexit. It says this. Our trade relationship is worth around $7 billion. There are more than 400 Israeli tech firms operating in the UK. Israeli investment into the UK drives growth, jobs, adding around £1 billion gross value to the UK economy, and has actually created 16,000 jobs over the last 8 years. Share with us our enemies who want to deploy the boycott, divestments and sanctions known as the BDS, the consequences of boycotting Israel with the BDS on British lives and British jobs and the British economy. I think from there shows you that this would be suicide if a British government ever tried to implement the BDS movement.
It would be disastrous, it would be illogical, and I think people would not take kindly. As you know, as I've said, 1 in 6 prescription drugs that are given out by the NHS are produced by Teva in Israel, and that would have huge detrimental impact on the health of the British nation. And if you look at the tech, the advancement in tech, you only have to look at the fact that the Bloomberg index of the most innovative countries, Israel was ranked number 7 in 2021 out of 60 countries, based on 7 different metrics. So the damage that it would do to the UK, it's just completely unreasonable. And the BDS also don't seem to be able to answer the question, which is the harm that it actually does to Palestinians and Arabs in Israel, who number 20% of the population and are very heavily employed and get on very, very well with Israelis. And there's just absolutely no reason that the BDS should be allowed to succeed. And I don't think any British government could sell boycotting Israel to a population.
Absolutely. And of course, I think the example comes to mind of the what happened to SodaStream, that actually they set up their headquarters within the kind of Palestinian Authority. They employed Palestinian workers 3 times above the salary of those actually living or working within the Palestinian Authority, and because of the BDS they had to close their factory down and operate in Israel proper, and of course all those jobs went. So we see that with the BDS it does nothing to actually help the Palestinians or Israeli Arabs at all, but it actually creates a negative economic impact instead.
Well, it harms the Palestinians, and I think the Palestinians are aware of that. Not only did SodaStream pay 3 times the average of the Palestinian salary, but the Palestinians were being paid the same wage as Israeli Jews, because there is no apartheid in Israel as far as I'm concerned, and it did enormous damage, and basically the jobs that the Palestinians lost went to Israeli Jews. And what did that achieve? It achieved nothing at all.
Yeah, and we quoted figures there from the Department of Trade and Industry to think that £7 billion worth of trade flows between our nations. That's how much it's worth to our nation trading with Israel. Share with us how that underpins a strong diplomatic and cultural and also security alliance that Israel has with, that Britain has with Israel.
I think Britain and Israel share values. I have to say, I think we share values. Israel is a modern secular state. It has a judicial law. There is no apartheid. Israelis, Israeli Arabs, Israeli Jews get on very, very well together. And I think that here in the UK, we actually respect that and we get that. Israel has a lot to offer the UK. Quite often you hear there'll be questions in the Houses of Parliament if there's been rockets being fired and Israel will respond. Somebody in Parliament, a politician, will say, are we exporting any arms to Israel? Well, actually, quite the reverse is true. The UK probably buys more military technology from Israel than Israel buys off the UK. So I think the damage that these arguments cause, really needs to be discussed at length.
Oh, absolutely.
Detail.
And I'll just give you, I like facts and figures, so I'm going to give you a few more facts and figures, Nigel, also for our viewers as well, of how important Israel is to the British economy. So here we go. The total UK exports to Israel amounted to 3.6 billion in the 4 quarters to the end of the fourth quarter of 2022. That's an increase of 36%. Or 944 million in current prices compared to the 4 quarters, the end of 2021. Total UK imports from Israel amounted to 3.6 billion in the 4 quarters due to end of the last quarter of 2022. That's an increase in 48.5% or 1.2 billion pounds in current prices compared to the 4 quarters to the end of the 4th quarter of 2021. Israel was the UK's 39th largest trading partner in the 4 quarters to the end of 2022 and accounting for 0.4% of total UK trade. I mean, that's impressive, isn't it, with those statistics, and just shows you how important Israel is to Britain as an international trade partner, and also I think highlights as well how important Israel is in terms of the British government's driving of Brexit.
Absolutely, but I think there's more to go. I think 39th trading partner in terms of UK, I think there's a lot more to go, and I think Israel and the UK can do a lot more business together and should do a lot more business together. There are opportunities that have come out of Brexit, and I think those opportunities should be grasped. And I think to some degree we have to put the politics to one side and look at what each country can offer the other.
No, absolutely, I know it's important, but also what does Israel benefit in terms of greater trade with Britain as well?
Well, I think Israel benefits because it provides employment, it provides for a better economy for Israel. Dual trade, tourism is huge for Israel, and I think that Israel needs the UK as much as the UK needs Israel.
Absolutely. So show us the extent of the Israeli success story known as the Startup Nation, and which is the success of Israeli innovation in its tech sector.
Well, I think a lot of the tech came about because, funny enough, when countries were looking to boycott Israel, then you have land barriers, and it's difficult to export, it's difficult to send goods across because goods are very large, go on pallets, containers. So it was about sending ideas, it was about creating ideas, and there are no barriers to sending ideas across borders, and that's how it all came about. It also, one has to say that Israel used to do a lot of business militarily with France around 1950, 1956, when the French decided, after the Suez Canal fiasco, that they would stop supplying Israel with arms. Israel had to find a way to be self-sufficient. And in that regard, Israel started to militarily build equipment for itself. And out of that came the innovations that Israel needed to survive in terms of cybersecurity, in terms of building its own tanks and its own airplanes. And I think this is how it came about.
Absolutely, and of course, this one I'll just give you some more data. It says, it's quite amazing to think that Israel has the highest number of startups per capita in the world, with more than 6,000 active companies. Share the reasons why you think that the Jewish state is such a success regarding the startup nations. And do you think Israel will go from startup nations to developing big multinational companies? Because that's, I think, the big challenge for Israel now, isn't it? Instead of selling these companies like Waze, which is a sat navigation app, and other developments that they've been able to develop, but actually then to develop their own big kind of corporations such as Google or Microsoft or what have you.
Well, I think they are, and I think when you look at the NASDAQ, Israel has more companies quoted on the NASDAQ than the rest of Europe put together. So I think Israel is making those strides, and I think there is huge investment still flowing into Israel from American companies such as Google and Microsoft and Uber. So there are countries that are recognising that Israel is a front runner in these technologies. I think it's for the rest of Europe to get on board and invest greater in Israel, because the results will be far, far-reaching.
Absolutely. And if we look at the kind of field in terms of agriculture, I mean, what Israel did after its independence and building that really important waterway so that the whole country could have a decent supply of water from the Kinneret or the Sea of Galilee, shows that back in the early 1950s, Israel showed incredible innovation when the state was only probably less than 5 years old. And now we see that Israel turning the desert and allowing the desert to bloom and blossom, is now showing other third world countries how they can eradicate water shortage problems and others. Just share with us how Israel as a nation is a light unto the nations and is really helping African countries and third world countries with water shortages and problems, how they can also be self-sufficient in terms of their energy production as well.
I think if you, for one example, if you look at a lady by the name of Sivan Yaari, she was the CEO and founder of Innovation Africa. And Innovation Africa basically is providing clean water across much of the African continent. And what Sivan Yaari and her team do is absolutely incredible. They work in partnership with African countries, and the benefits are incredible. It's not just the clean water, but when you consider in some of these villages that are remote from clean water, many of the young girls have to go maybe 3-4 hours there and back to fetch clean water. What Innovation Africa does, it basically enables, it provides water to these remote villages, because it digs down, it builds a well, it provides clean water. The clean water allows the children, particularly the girls, not to have to go to the well for clean water, but to stay in school and to be educated. It also provides electricity, which allows the schools to provide lighting. And so it's not just the water that it provides, it's basically the benefits that come from that. And again, it's the irrigation technologies that are coming to Africa from Volcani International Partnerships, who are working again across the African continent in partnership to provide and to basically to cultivate African farmers to provide more food, so that there aren't the food shortages and there aren't the water shortages.
Which is amazing. So let's have a look at this in action. Well, this is Israel's incredible innovation in terms of agriculture.
God gave us 500,000 plants that all themselves carried critical, active, medicinal compounds that are so important for the human body.
And by trying to scientifically get the best of what plants offer, BioHarvest Sciences CEO Ilan Sobel says his company has reached an amazing breakthrough.
We at BioHarvest Sciences have developed a platform technology that's able to take any essential, active, medicinal compound from the plant, and we grow these compounds in cells in a way we are able to maintain the original structural composition of these specific medicinal compounds.
Using a process shrouded in secrecy, the cells are developed in bioreactors for 3 weeks and then harvested.
We call the technology bioplant solicitation. And this technology helps us to grow cells in liquid media, to mimic the nature, to take all the benefits of the nature and to power it, to make it better.
We left with an amazingly soluble and bioavailable end product with this unique powder, which ultimately contains all the essential polyphenols from a plant.
Food science professor Zohar Kerem of the Hebrew University says this technology goes beyond what university labs have accomplished in this area.
The technology of bioharvest is revolutionary in the sense that they know today how to take productive organs of a plant, might it be the fruit, the flowers, the leaves, and they can grow these in culture and make them produce the expected amount of the compound that they are looking for.
And that's not all.
The second is the upscale from a petri dish or from a little flask at the lab to industrial production, and their technology allows to do the upscaling rapidly and in a safe way. I've analyzed their products, and they are what they say they are.
The first product, Vinia, is made from skin, flesh, and seed cells of the red grape. Scientists got the idea from what's called the French paradox.
French people, they generally have a very fatty diet. Lots of pâté, lots of liver, lots of cheeses, but they have very good cardiovascular health. And the scientists realized it was from moderate consumption of red wine. They realized it was from a combination of polyphenols from the red grape. There was one king polyphenol called piceid resveratrol.
Each capsule of Vinia in this jar contains the same amount of piceid resveratrol as a full bottle of red wine, or 1,000 grapes, but without the sugar, the alcohol, or the calories.
Together working with other polyphenols like catechin, quercetin, tannins, and anthocyanins, they work together in order to provide this really excellent cardiovascular health.
Using this map, Malkit Azachi, VP of Research and Development, describes a healthy cardiovascular system as more than 60,000 miles of highway with no traffic jams, construction zones, or detours.
In the center of healthy circulation system, you will find healthy heart, and this heart keeps the blood pumping and the energy flowing because the oxygen reaches to all the organs in our body.
Sobel says clinical trials show that Vinia helped increase the dilation of arteries by at least 70% in each participant in just 3 months.
Vinia is driving a transformational change in people's lives, whether it's increased physical energy from blood flow or literally having the mental alertness to not have to worry about an afternoon sleep.
Sobel says there are environmental benefits as well.
In 1 year, we're able to produce the equivalent of roughly 250,000 square meters of land. When it comes to water, all of our water is biodegradable.
They're also encouraging the pharmaceutical industry to go back to its plant-based roots.
We can go back to the plant and take the critical, essential, active medicinal compounds from the plant, and we're able to bring the consistency that the pharmaceutical companies need.
The grape is one of the 7 species of the Bible listed in Deuteronomy 8:8. 2 other plant products from that list are currently in development. Olivia from olives, designed to maintain normal cholesterol levels, and palmia from pomegranates for anti-inflammatory support. Chris Mitchell, CBN News, Jerusalem.
I think that just shows you the extent of Israel's innovation and how Israel as a nation is light years ahead of so many different countries, particularly when it comes to agriculture, but also in terms of health. And I personally could benefit from that as well. What are your thoughts on that incredible innovation that we just saw in that excellent report put together by CBN?
Absolutely amazing technology. I was not aware of it beforehand, but I think it's absolutely staggering. And I think that Israel is again demonstrating what it can offer the world and what it wants to offer the world. These are not things that Israel is doing just for Israel alone, looking to share these technologies and these inventions with the world. It's an incredible story, one that I was not aware of, but I will be looking to get in touch with Vinia to see if I can get them over to the UK.
Oh, that'll be good. That'll be very good because I think a lot of people could benefit from their products. Certainly our viewers could as well, including myself. Nigel, share with us also how Israel is leading at the forefront of when it comes to cybersecurity and security. We know the incredible security cooperation now between Britain and Israel is quite incredible. For the first time, the Royal Air Force flew for Israel's Yom Ha'atzmaut 75th anniversary. And the cooperation between our 2 nations in terms of defence is huge. But also share with us Israel's incredible work in terms of cybersecurity, because these are the biggest security threats that our nation and other Western nations face around the world, with enemies such as the Islamic Republic of Iran, China, Russia. That Israel has to be ahead of the game in terms of protecting our internet and our internet infrastructure in this country?
Well, my understanding is that Israel suffers more cyber attacks than any country on the planet, and has done and continues to do so. And state players such as Iran from Tehran are bombarding Israel on a regular basis and trying to bring the economy down. So it's a necessity for Israel to be at the forefront of cybersecurity. But again, wherever Israel is at the forefront, it exports that technology and is happy to do so. Cyber technology is not my area of expertise, but I do know that it is born out of a necessity, not a desire.
Yeah, and also we see with Israel's innovation as well that, for example, because of the signing of the historic Abraham Accords, we're seeing huge investment on behalf of the United Arab Emirates into Israel. The Saudis have also invested billions of US dollars in Israel as well. Share with us how the kind of Abraham Accords are also helping Israel to develop some amazing technology with Arab money, that obviously the Arabs are also benefiting from working and cooperating with Israel in terms of science, technology, innovation.
I think it's great that some of the Arab countries are starting to realise that Israel actually isn't the enemy, and Israel can be the answer to problems in some of the Middle Eastern states. And I think the investment that is coming from the Abraham Accord countries, and the cross-trade, and the fact that Israelis can now go to countries they could never go before, it's only a good thing. What I would say is that I think it would be hugely encouraging if Saudi Arabia would be a little bit more open towards Israel. I know it's almost like it's not quite a peace, and they're not quite a member of the Accords, but I think they should be, and I think that would be very, very good for the entire region.
No, absolutely. And for our viewers watching, maybe we have some business people watching the programme today that are passionate about business. Share with us on a practical level how they can get involved in Israel, how they can help develop a stronger trade and commercial ties between our nation and the nation of Israel.
BICC. I'm Executive Director, the British Israel Chamber of Commerce. Absolutely does what it says on the label, and if any of your viewers, if any of the companies want to get in touch with the BICC to see if they can do business in Israel, or to see if Israel can do business with them, very, very pleased to see if we can basically move that forward.
And they would just search your details into Google?
Yes,
right, yeah.
British Israel Chamber of Commerce in Manchester, Nigel Tobias, Executive Director. Very happy. As I say, in a few weeks we have an Israeli trade minister, the attaché to the embassy, who's coming to give a presentation in Manchester. That's Ofer Fora. It's easy, just make contact.
Excellent, that's really good. And share with us as well how important it is that the Christians continue to advocate for Israel and stand up for the only democratic state in the Middle East, and as well as part of our incredible heritage that we share, which is our Judeo-Christian heritage. And we have the Jewish community to thank for our morals, the moral statutes that we get from the Word of God, which is the Bible.
I think, first of all, Israel still needs all the help it can get. But I do think that we share very, very strong Judeo-Christian values. And as I might have said a little bit earlier, my mum converted to Judaism. She was Christian. They've been together for 70 years. It shows what can happen when you put differences aside and look for the principles that you share, not the problems that divide us. So I think that the Christian community can continue to be great supporters and advocates for Israel, and we still need that help and we still need that support.
And also, how important is it as well that Christian communities living in the northwest of England support the Jewish communities? I know there's a small one in Liverpool, and you're representing the Jewish community in Manchester, Nigel, as well, to actually get involved and turn up to some of the events and help to go to some of the rallies and to show that practical love towards Israel, but also to your Jewish community, who we value very highly.
Well, I think it's very important. We need to know. We would appreciate knowing that we are loved in the communities that we are in the UK. And I think there is absolutely no doubt that we would love that kind of support. And if, open house. So if the Christian community wants to show their support for Israel, that would be very, very welcome indeed.
Excellent. And your thoughts of how our government can develop stronger commercial ties with this nation. I'm sure you should be advising Rishi Sunak and how they can do that, and certainly the Minister for Trade and Industry should take some of your advice, I think, Nigel.
To be fair, I think the current British government are very well inclined towards Israel, very well disposed towards Israel, and I think that can only get stronger. I think that the British government, to be fair, on both sides of the political divide, realise that Israel has got more to offer, and to use an old analogy, it's better for Israel to be inside the tent than for it to be outside of the tent. I think the trade with Israel will grow, and I think what does concern me still is that there is such huge vocal opposition and such huge toxic nonsense that comes out about Israel. And every time there is a problem, people talk politically about disproportionality, to which I would say, is it more Jews that you want to die, or is it more Palestinians that you want to save? And I don't think there is a disproportionality, and I think we need to take head on some of the arguments that come Israel's way, and I think the Christian community can do a great service in helping to spread that.
Nigel, I just want to thank you so much for being my special guest this week, and also doing such a good job in representing the Jewish community in Manchester. And of course I had 3 years up in Manchester, so I'm very fond of your community and also know how dynamic your community is in terms of Israel advocacy, and I think you've done them proud. So thank you for being my guest, very much enjoyed it. Thank you.
Simon, thank you very much indeed, and look forward to welcoming you to Manchester very, very soon.
Appreciate that. And I just want to thank you for watching this programme today. What we've actually seen through this programme today is looking at Israel beyond the conflict and see how important Israel is to our nation in terms of our economy, but also Israel's incredible innovation and technologies that are benefiting us and also the third world. And truly, Israel is a light unto the nations. So I want to thank you for watching this week's edition of the Middle East Report. Shalom and God bless.